All right. So at the beginning of the hour here, I had kids take this matrix. We called it matrix A. And then what was this part again? We found the what? Determinant. The determinant was that part. And then this part is finding the what? The inverse. And I showed you by hand how to do it. Notably, these two had to reverse places, and these two had to have their signs changed to the opposite. And the opposite of 0 is still 0, though. And then you actually multiply it out. And then I asked kids to make sure they knew how to do that on a calculator, because on your next test, calculators will be allowed on the whole test. I've looked that up. Now, does that mean, oh, sweet, then I don't have to know how to do it by hand? No, because if I said, here, find the inverse of this, do you get you could still do it by hand? There'd just be an A in your answer. Let's just do the determinant part right now. 2 times 7 is 14 minus 1 times A is A. 14 minus A is the determinant. It shouldn't freak you out that there's variables in your answer. It's okay. You're at a high enough level of math to say that's no big deal. And then if I was going to find the inverse, you should be able to do that too. But I'm not going to make you multiply it all the way out, but set up the answer for the inverse. Calculator couldn't do it. You could. Because for now, anyway, you're smarter than your computer. Yes. Good question. Well, first of all, the determinant, you'd absolutely have to be able to do this like I just did. And then for the test, you'd have to be able to set it up like this, 1 over that. And then switch these two, so you should have said 7 and 2, right? And then make these the opposite of what they are. There. At a minimum, you'd have to do that. I know your question was, would you have to multiply it out? It all depends on what the directions say. If it's just set it up, then it's set up. If it's, multiply it out, then you'd have to multiply it out. All right. And multiplying it out would mean this times this. It's not that hard. Just remember the 7 is a 7 over 1, so you remember the 7 goes on top. 7 over 14 minus A would be the first element of your matrix. And you'd go on and do the rest of them. It wouldn't be that hard. It's just fractions. Okay, so moral of the story, I'm just trying to make sure, even though you know calculators are allowed, don't think they'll solve all your problems. They will solve the toughest ones, though, because, like, let's say I gave you this. 104, 925, and 10, negative 1. If I asked you to find the determinant of that, what would you do? Go, Mr. Sturby didn't teach us that. So you'd probably grab a calculator. But wait, don't do it. I know you could type that in and hit DET. If you don't know where DET is, it's under math. When you're in the matrix menu, you'd have to choose that option of math on the matrix. All right, so you'd find determinant of A, or whatever you called this. All right, so what I want to do now, though, that's more important, and you do need to do, is show you a gigantor system of equations and how you would solve it using your calculator. We did this the other day, but you weren't as smart as you are now. It was your first intro to it. So let's say I said x plus y plus z is equal to 14. Notice I did not have a z for this one. And on the third equation, now I only made one little hiccup in this, and that was that the middle one didn't have any z's. Do you get there could have been other complications like, oh, the top one didn't have any x's. You'd have to put a 0x to hold the place. How many of you figured out that you should put a 0 Z right here to hold the place. That was smart. All right, then how else could it be complicated? What if this one said minus 23 equals 0? Would you have been smart enough to know, oh, I better move that 23 to the other side? Because there's x, y, z, and a number. That doesn't seem to fit. So you'd add 23 to both sides, and you'd have that equation that we wrote a second ago. See what I'm saying? You need to take a minute to arrange your numbers so you have all your x's first, your y's second, your z's third, and your last thing after the equals would just be a nice, clean, whole number. All right, so I'm going to go back in time. Just trying to remind you, they aren't always set up perfectly and beautiful for you. You have to get them arranged. So all your x's are here, all your y's are here, and all your z's are there. Now, I know some of you have got a pretty darn good short-term memory, and you already learned how to do this from me like a day ago. No, 2 days ago. If you can, I'll give you just this hint. Set up the matrix for this that you'll use to solve the equation. If you can't do that, I haven't failed you yet. I'll put that away. I see what you're up to there. Pausing. Okay, you should have said 1, 1, 1, 3, 2, 0, 1, negative 1, 2, x, y, z. How many remember to put the x, y, z right there? Okay, and last but not least, 14, 7, 23. This is your A matrix. This doesn't need to be put in the calculator, and it's a good thing because you wouldn't be able to do it anyways. It won't accept variables in a matrix. Okay, so then we don't need a name for that. That we're going to call the B matrix. And how do I get this A matrix out of here? Hint, if it was 2x equals 15, you would multiply both sides by 1/2 or divide them by 2. But by the way, in matrix world, you can't divide. You can only multiply, and you know how to multiply, and you can multiply by a fraction. Anytime you really want to divide, just multiply by a fraction. Okay, so then this one would be 15 over 2. How do I do that? What was the 2 and the 1/2? Those were inverses, right? So how do we get rid of the A matrix? With the inverse of A matrix. And if I do it to this side, I have to do it to that side. So if I knew what the A matrix was and I could put a -1 power on it, that's what you really want to do. If you do this part, it's kind of dumb. It's just going to turn into the identity matrix, which you don't need. You don't need that. That's just, I can tell you what it would look like. It would have 1s all the way down here and 0s everywhere else. This part's pretty dumb. That part is your answer, and it's pretty handy. Use your calculator right now. Put this in as the A matrix right here, where I've just revealed, and put in the 14, 7, 23 as the B matrix. And in the end, you're going to do inverse A times B. I'm going to pause for a second. If you do it backwards, it won't work anyways. You got to do the inverse A on the left and the B on the right. Because remember that A times B is different than B times A. So this has to go in exactly the way you see it with inverse A first. I'll pause for a second while you try that. Okay, I'm going to show this part for the people at home. I went in and I hit edit matrix A, and I made it a 3 by 3. And now I'm going to type in my numbers. I'm going to move this over, pausing for a second. Okay. And now I'm going to put in my numbers 1, 1, 1, 3, 2, 0, 1, 1, 1, 3, 2, 0, and -1, negative, or 1, -1, 2. All right, I got matrix A in. Now I'm going back into the matrix menu and choose to edit B. And did you figure out, was the B matrix a 1 by 3 or a 3 by 1? 3 by 1, I agree. And its numbers were 14, 7, and 23. All right. And now, this is weird, but I think it's best to just quit. Some of you, that's your philosophy in general in life. This is actually a strategy. I'm clearing off the board, and now I got to say, what do I want? I want inverse A. So I got to go and say A. How do I get the A matrix? Then I go back to the matrix menu, and I just hit enter when I see the A. And then I need to the -1. And then I'm going to say, oh, there's my A to the -1. Well, that didn't help. I should have gone up and said times something. Did you know that you can arrow back up next to the problem? Oh, is it not going to let me do this in this version? Okay. Okay, there we go. And I got it back again. And now I'm going to say times B. Times the B matrix. And I'm sorry it's taking a while, but there's my final answer. Did you get 1.57, 1.14, and 11.28? All right. Now, I could absolutely see a test question saying, and you must put the answers in fraction form, which would be really gross unless you knew how to do one more thing on the calculator. Do you know the combo? Go ahead. Yeah. Math. Enter. Enter one more time. Math, enter, enter. And there we go. 11 sevenths, 8 sevenths, and 79 sevenths. Any questions on that? Yay, you've learned everything. Now, how could this get any harder? What if, instead of giving you all those equations at the beginning, what if I told you a story which led to the equations? Do you get what I'm saying? It's only one extra step, but it is likely. So let me just explain how that would look. You see the very top equation there? That would be like saying, you bought 1 banana, 1 pear, and 1 kumquat. Yes, it's a real fruit. And you paid $14. And believe me, at some places in Hawaii, it's so expensive there. That's possible. All right, then 3 apples, 2 bananas, but no kumquats, cost $7. Get what I'm saying? You'd have to write the equations first. And then set them up nice, and then put them in a matrix equation. And these problems are so big on the test, a lot of times we'll break it into parts, kind of like last test, where like setting up the equation got you an R2, solving the equation got you an R3, that kind of thing. All right, so it'll be a little bit like last test in that way. But you guys rocked last test, and this is very similar, except it involves some technology, but most of you are good with technology, so I think this test is going to go well. All right, tomorrow's the official review day, and then the next day is the test. All right, so let's look at tonight's homework and show you which parts to do and which parts to skip. I'm going to pause for a second. All right, so here's our worksheet. You may skip number 2. Pay attention, please. So on number 1, how are you going to start? You're going to add this matrix right here to both sides. You can assume, I don't need to see this, as much work as normal, because that would imply adding that whole matrix on the left and the right side. All you really need to do is get rid of that by adding it over here. So yeah, you're going to add. Can you be quiet, please? Thank you. I can hear that. All right. And now I'm adding those, and that can be done in your head. It's totally fine. And then I have -2a equals this new matrix. And how do I get the -2 off of there? Remember, you can't divide. Times by -1/2. And that's called a scalar multiply. That just means you don't have to do any complicated setup. You just multiply everything in there by -1/2. All right, so there's some help on getting started. Then we're going to skip problems 4 and 6. If you want more practice on rearranging equations, which is an important skill, you're going to get it in number 5, but you could do number 6. Just because I said you could skip it doesn't mean you have to skip it. If you aren't good at that, if you try this one and you goober it all up, then maybe you should try 6. But 6 is skip. It's optional then. It's not you can't do it. All right, and then moving on to 7, 8, 9, I think 8's the most tame one to skip. I don't want you to miss out on stuff that's important for the test. So I would recommend doing all the other ones. When you get to this, do you get they're giving you a word problem? It's going to give you these equations like this. That kind of stuff. That's not the right answer. I just made that one up. But you're going to get 3 equations and 3 variables. Or the one I did was massive. Sometimes there are only 2 equations, 2 variables. So like, let's say it was just x plus y equals 50, and 2x plus 3y equals 60. Then you could just set up a little smaller matrix, what's called a square matrix, it's 2 by 2. All right, so my point is they don't always have to be 3 by 3 matrices when the word problems. Sometimes there's only 2 equations. This one again would end up being, if I had gone this route, I'm totally making this one up, you'd have 1, 1, 2, 3. You'd have x and y only, and you'd have your answer matrix of 50 and 60. Again, I'm totally making that one up, just saying they don't have to be 3 by 3 problems. They could be 2 by 2s. Okay, good enough. So you're skipping number 8, 5, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, no, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Who do we appreciate? Those 2, 4, 6, and 8 are skips. All right, that's all I got for you for today.